In today's video, we're diving into the key economic events coming up this week and what you need to keep an eye on if you're investing, day trading, or just staying informed about the economy. We're going to go over certain stocks, my plays, and what to expect from a supply and demand standpoint, and how to position yourself to be a winner going into the next following week and hopefully into the new year. I'm not kidding you, this week is packed. There's a lot of important economic events that could have a significant impact on the markets that we need to definitely take a look at for. Here are the top highlights of the ones that are going to matter the most. Federal Reserve Chair Jerome Powell is set to speak, which could provide insights into future monetary policy decisions that are going to impact the rest of the market. Here are the most important facts that we got to look out for. Powell will likely go ahead and discuss the most important topic, which is the economic outlook going into the further year. Powell will likely discuss the current state of the U.S. economy, including updates on growth, employment, and inflation trends. Given recent comments from him and other Fed officials, he might emphasize that the balance between maintaining economic strength and managing inflation is going to be the core to what we're going to expect to have success going into the economy. Next is going to be monetary policy. There's a strong expectation that Powell will delve into the Federal Reserve's monetary policy stance, particularly in light of recent economic data. He might comment on the pace of interest rate adjustments, especially since recent posts on X suggest a cautious approach to further rate cuts. Next, that really is the most important topic, inflation. With inflation having been a main focal point in 2024, we could see how Powell could target insights into whether inflation is sustainable to a path of the Fed's target of 2%. Followed by the labor market. Discussions around labor market conditions, including employment levels, wage growth, and labor market tightness are anticipated. We want to see how we're going to perform from a job standpoint if we're truly going to be having a good path to recovery. My first one on my list is going to be Nvidia. Nvidia is poised to extend its bullish run next week with analysts eyeing a breakout above 140. Confidence is going to be key. Savvy investors should watch for strategic dips to capitalize on buying opportunities. Watch for upcoming earnings and anticipated updates on the revolutionary Blackwell architecture, making this a pivotal moment to stay ahead. Whenever you're trying to pick your direction for any single stock, you want to make sure you track the most important point, taking a look at its overall longer term trend. From a weekly standpoint, we can obviously, that Nvidia is obviously following a trend with the higher high, higher low. But eventually we're probably going to be due for a little bit of a pullback. The question is going to be where. So we want to see where exactly buyers are going to step up. Higher highs, higher lows, bull flag patterns. You can see these being created inside the chart of the weekly trend. So we want to see where exactly this can potentially take place. My bet is in my direction that Nvidia could have the potential chance to retest back down into the 128 range. Hopefully if it breaks under 134.71. So from a higher highs, higher low standpoint, on a weekly trend, we can see the price trend is actually squeezing, indicating a potential move for an upside or a potential breakdown. How most people are going to take a look at this, we want to see if this is going to either break down from its trend, or are we going to bounce back up, hitting its higher median. So what I mean by that is if we take a bounce from that 128 spot, 133 range, could we test even higher, closer to the 159 spot? But of course, we can't just rely on trend to make a decision, especially if we're going to be day trading. So we want to make sure we take a look at where specifically buyers and sellers are going to step in. And we're going to change that direction by just taking a look at, from a supply and demand standpoint, where buyers and sellers are stepping in. From a selling perspective, it's very clear here that 149.70 to 146.69, there is a clear upkeep of sellers, or a huge abundance of sellers in a specific range. 150 all the way to around 146.68, you can clearly see a huge imbalance of sellers proportionate to buyers. You can see here, if I drew these arrow indication, selling indications have been happening at this range. Just take a look at it 3 times in a row. Nvidia has had issues trying to break above this spot. So we know that from a buying standpoint, we don't want to specifically buy at that range, where you're going to have a better chance buying where a demand is set forth. You want to see where buyers have stepped into. Train your eyes to see where exactly buyers have propped in. At that 127.31 spot, it's pretty clear buyers are baked in into this level. So what does that tell you? So we know from Friday previous day lows that 134.71 is a spot that we want to watch out for. Because if we break below that previous day low, when we break below a pre-market low, it's clear that a trend is being set forth. We can see a potential target to break above that 128.70 range. We want to also take a look and see if we break a previous high. We can see over here we do have significant selling set forth here on the daily chart. So I know sellers are around that 141.94 to around 139.71 level. So if I'm trying to chase the previous day high, I wouldn't think that's a good spot for me to enter into because I'm entering directly into a supply. Selling has been occurring at the spot. So a safer trend for me would be to wait and see if we could break above that 142.02 level to test around back at those previous highs. These are the highs I'm talking about. So if I'm looking for an opportunity to trade NVIDIA, I wouldn't touch this thing unless we short under 134.71 down into 128 or at least above 142. Buying above 139.11 spells a huge opportunity for you to buy into a trap. I don't like that spot for a potential long going into the week. Next stock on my list is going to be one that's been having a lot of volatility recently, which is going to be MSTR. MSTR stock is poised for an upward trajectory next week, with expectations of surpassing $400 per share. The bullish outlook is largely due to Bitcoin's positive trends. However, be prepared for volatility as crypto markets can sway stock prices. Analysts suggest watching closely for any dips, which could serve as buying opportunities, but also be aware of potential overvaluation risks. Honestly, this stock is actually really easy to understand because we're sitting right before an actual demand was already taking place. I know we talked about the weekly trend, but overall as such, this looks to have a huge breakout and a potential dip buy opportunity. You can see we've already had a huge breakout of this bullish consolidation right above that $200 range. So we know for a fact, I mean, this is potential bull flag pattern where we have lower lows, lower highs being created. I want to more so pay attention to how the supply and demand is taking place, because what I can see so far in this trend that we have a huge amount of buyers obviously baked into 341.56 all the way to 317.72. So I know we're at a pretty good shot here. I know we have a previous day low at that 323.14 spot. So I'm very curious to see how this plays out. If we break under this demand, we realistically do not have another buying opportunity where we have a rally-based rally where buyers have held that 275 to 263 range. We know this spot is at a pivotal standpoint. So this could be a good opportunity if volume does arise, meaning that we have volume anywhere from 43 to around 79 million in total volume, that we could have a potential sell-off down into that 260 range. Now, a lot of people could be very optimistic. We can see this opportunity to be a huge buying opportunity to push back into that 363 spot. Why do I say 363 could be a potential area where we could have a potential supply? Well, it's pretty clear that we're under the VWAP, we're under the 8 estimated moving average. We can see that we have a huge uplift of selling occurring at that 362 to 357 range. So if I'm a buyer here, what is my indication for me to know that buyers are actually stepping in? There are a couple ways you can do this. One, you can magnify the chart, maybe the 2-hour chart, and potentially try to look for buying actually taking place. And one way we could actually look at that is seeing where exactly you have sellers actually go into the actual demand, buyers step in aggressively, overpowering that seller sentiment. We call that a basing period, followed by engulfing green. Now, every single time that has happened in this chart, basing red candle, engulfing green, right here, basing red candle, engulfing green, we see buyers aggressively push in. One indication of that happening back in November the 14th, one indication of that happening on December the 19th. So I know going into the market this week, if I'm looking for a potential trade or a trade idea or thesis, I would preferably like to see buyers show up in strength with potential volume so that way I could retest back into that 359 spot. It's so clear as day when you magnify the charts that there is obviously selling occurring at that 360 spot. It may be a lot harder to see on the daily, but if you go into a smaller time frame, you can see that selling occur. So if I'm looking for an opportunity to buy, you can look for that basing green candle engulfing red, or if we break the previous day high, also the previous, the pre-market highs, then we can go ahead and actually push into that 362 spot. What about after that, Brian? What do you see a potential area where selling could occur? I mean, one thing is for sure, we see a huge macro supply of sellers from 453.38 to 403.05. So if my target to break after 360 is going to be closer into that 440, 420 spot, it's clear selling is occurring at that spot. But I am going to refuse to potentially short this unless we can break this demand. There's a lot of buyers baked into this spot. you might as well wait and be patient for this opportunity to take place. Don't rush into the trade, because rushing into trades is how you're going to get trapped.